Okay, I think we can get started. So welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to have you here in this second Science Cafe organized by the European University Reform Alliance, also known as ERUA to most of you. So 2 weeks ago, we got to host the first of the Science Cafes on the 18th of September. And the goal was to engage as many different stakeholders, including students, staff, citizens, community leaders, policy actors, and science enthusiasts to help us map sustainable transitions as they relate to mobility and waste. So the goal of this format essentially is to get as much ideas about those issues and how they can be applied in different universities, how different campuses and different localities shape those areas. And hopefully, if I did my work fine, we engaged in some dialogue between different stakeholders, which we're very much hoping to continue today. Today's goal is a bit more, I would say, specific, and we want your help to shape a policy document that we will be producing around waste and mobility and ways to create more sustainable campuses. So I once again have the joy and the pleasure of hosting two amazing young researchers from the University of the Aegean. By the way, I am Spiros Boufilatos. I am your host for the day, and I'm very rude because I forgot to introduce myself. I am a researcher working part-time at the University of the Aegean, and I am also a tutor at the Royal College of Arts in London. Um, and again, today, I think the goal is to move on from ideas and initiatives that we mapped last week and move on to creating a policy document that will try to codify all those thoughts and ideas around around the European University Alliances. So in order to be more interactive and get you to participate even more, we will be using Mentimeter, which is an amazing interactive tool that you can use to engage with your audience. So this is a link you can use to access Mentimeter throughout this presentation. And we can try it. So I have my first question in front of you. If I've done everything right, you should be seeing the question, which is, are you here by your own will? And yeah, if you vote, I think we will be able to see the results. Hopefully, can we? Yeah, awesome, awesome. So only three can't answer. That's okay. And the voting has been closed. Yeah, we'll get to vote for another question. I think we have another question for you. So what do you know about policy creation? Do you know how this works? Is this completely new to you? Okay, half and half. No, but I am thrilled to learn. I'm thrilled that you're thrilled, I have to say. Okay, this is great. This was a great proof of concept. So that's gonna take us through. So yeah, bear that in mind that today is all about creating policy, and essentially what we say by creating policy is that we want to take all the best practices around Europe and especially around the universities that are part of ERUA and codify that, so create laws and policies that help to make these initiatives more sustainable, more effective, and more efficient. Um, So enough with my talking. I will, as I said, have the privilege to welcome Nikki and Nancy, two researchers from the University of the Aegean. So Miss Nikki Krusouloudi and Miss Nancy Orfanou will be talking to us about the results of the analysis of the survey that we run around issues of mobility and waste. So welcome, the floor is yours, and hello.
Thank you, Spiros.
Hello.
Thank you all for joining our second Science Café. I'm going to share my screen. Is it fine? Okay. So I'm Nikki Krusouloudi. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of the Aegean. And with Nancy, we're developed a survey about travel and waste routine for the students and staff around ERUA. And I'm going to give a look in the first descriptive statistics of the participants. Most of them were Greeks, and they were from the University of the Aegean, and a couple of them from other universities or citizens from Greece. And most of them were students. A couple of them were PhD candidates and researchers, and less were professors or staff from the university. Okay, I'm digging to the questionnaire. So we had a couple of questions about their ownership. 88% of them didn't own a motorcycle, and 51% owned a car. Half of them had a public transport monthly pass or weekly pass or free pass for the students, and 58% had a bike or a scooter or a mode of micromobility. And then they were asked how many times they use it, its mode for the transfer to the university in a typical week. So most of them used to walk in daily basis to go to the university. Besides, they had a bike. They don't use it to do their transfer to the university. They used to go by public transport, or if they have a car, by car. But very small percentage used to go as a passenger, so they don't know how to do carpooling or motorcycle pooling or vehicle pooling in order to go to the same destination as their friend or their colleague. Next, we had a couple of questions, a couple of statements where they were asked to complete their level of agreement from 1 to 5, where 5 is that they totally agree and 1 is they totally disagree. They were asked if they are environmental conscious and if they are aware of the climate change. Here we can see the average rate. They're both very high. They say that they are aware about the climate change, but they're not so environmental consciousness. And next we had a couple of questions of statements for the mobility, and Nancy will present the waste ones. The higher rate belongs to the statement that they will be willing to switch their transportation modes to more friendly ones if they were available. The second one is that they try to use more sustainable modes in their daily commute. Next is that they're interested in electric vehicle adoption. And the next ones, the lowest ones, are that they had already used a carpooling or ride-sharing system, or that they have participated in educational programs. These are very low, as you can see, more analytical here, and they don't use carpooling or sharing systems applications or forms, or they don't communicate very well with their friends, so they don't use it. Besides, they're trying to use more friendly modes, or they're willing to use them if they're available at the campus or the community. Here we have the travel initiatives that we proposed, the questionnaire. We had the pedestrian-friendly campus design. We had the bike sharing programs, carpooling and ride-sharing platforms, shuttle services, the promotion of e-bikes and scooters, the public transport partnerships, and the educational campaigns. And here we will see its initiative. At the left graphs, you will see the willingness to use an alternative. At the right, you will see how feasible is to take place on the campus. So at the first, we have the pedestrian-friendly campus design. As you can see, the 61%, it will be used all the time. And they believe that it's possible under standard conditions to be built, and uneasy to carry out alternative. Next, we have the bike sharing programs. They will use it often, not all the time, but it's possible to rebuild under certain conditions. Next, we have the carpooling and ride-sharing platforms. We had the highest rate of the alternative that it cannot be done, which was 16%, and the willingness to be used was 35% of people that we will use it sometimes. Next, we had the shuttle service. The shuttle service will be used sometimes or often by people, but no one tell that it will not use it. And it can be developed possibly under certain conditions that believe the 59% of the people. Next, we have the promotion of e-bikes and scooters. As you can see, there is a very small percentage of people that we will not use it, only 12%, and most of them will use it often. It's easy for the campus to be carried out for the almost 40%, and the 53% believes that it's possible to be built under certain conditions. Then we have the public transport partnerships, an easy to carry out alternative, and it will be used often and all the time by most of the participants. And lastly, we have the educational campaigns, easy to carry out by the 73% of the participants, and it will be used by all of them all the time or often, or at least once, if it will be done. And here we have the most possible to use all the time, which is the pedestrian-friendly campus design by 61%. The most possible to use often is the public transport partnership by the 49%. The most easy to be carried out is the educational campaigns that believe the 73%. And then we had the most possible under certain conditions, which is the carpooling and ride-sharing platforms or applications. Okay, let's move to Nancy.
So, hello everybody. I am Athanasios Orfanou, or Nancy, as Spiros Nikki has mentioned. And I am here to talk about a little bit of the second part, the zero to waste. And Nikki will help me with the slides. So let's go to the next one. And it's the same slide that she mentioned. So we will go to the next one, please. And so we will see, we want to see a little bit about, as we can see here, people, most of the majority is familiar with the concept of zero waste. And also they are willing to purchase products with sustainable packaging, even if they go slightly more. Also, they are willing to reduce, they have already reduced the use of single-use plastic and disposable items, such as water bottles and utensils. And not all of them have participate actively in recycling programs or campus in their community, so that could be improved. As well as to attend more workshops or events related to waste reduction and sustainability. So this will be a very good idea for campuses to have more events and more workshops about that, and more recycling programs. Let's go to the next slide. That it's a little bit more analytic about what we have already discussed. And Nikki?
You want this?
Yeah, yes, it's a little bit stuck in my, I have stayed in the same slide. I don't know if yours has already moved. Yes, thank you very much. So let's talk about the waste initiatives that they are in the next slide, because we have already discussed that. So in campus, the waste initiatives that we have mentioned, that it will be very good to already exist in some universities, but in some other, it will be very good to implement, is waste sorting stations, composting programs, bottle refilling stations that in islands like mine is very useful, e-waste recycling, that you can recycle your electronic devices, zero waste events that we see that many people haven't already participated, reusable shopping bags, educational campaigns, and green office that, as we said in the previous science cafes, in some university as Constance, they have already a green office. So in the next slide, we will see its initiative, as Nikki mentioned in her mobility part, how willing the people are to use it and how feasible it is. So in the waste sorting stations, if it's if they install clearly marked waste sorting station across campus, the people will be very willing to use it, like 63%, and the other 29%, they would use it often. So, and also they are thinking that it's easy to carry out, which I think I agree also. And it will be possible in some points under certain conditions. Maybe in some campuses, it's more difficult to install these sorting stations. In the next slide, we will see the composting programs that people are in between, if they would use it all the time for 41%, and if they would use it often. But certainly they agree about that it's possible to happen under certain conditions, because composting programs sometimes it needs also, for example, from the cafeterias and the dining facilities to agree to have a composting station in there, next to the restaurant. But 33% thinks that it's easy to carry out. The next one, the next initiative is about a bottle refilling station, that if it's possible to install water bottle refilling stations to encourage the use of reusable water bottles instead of plastic ones, and that they are disposable. And I think it's the majority of the people agree that they will be using it all the time, and also that it will be easy to carry out. And Next one will be the electronic waste recycling, that it will be to provide these designated bins for the collection of recycling and electronic waste, such as all computers, smartphones, tablets. If this exists to the campus, they will be using it all the time, the 59%, and many people will be using it often, the 31%. And it's a little bit divided between if it's easy to carry out, half of the people think that it's easy to carry out, and almost the other half that it's possible under certain conditions. Next one, it will be the zero waste events. That it's the events to promote zero waste practices at the university events and functions. For example, including in some events compostable servingware and minimizing single-use items. Here we see that they are not really, many people are willing to use, but not as thrilled as the other initiatives. For example, 39%, as you can see, they say that it will be used often. And also 59% thinks that it is easy to carry out, but 35 thinks that it's going to be under certain conditions. So the next one is the reusable shopping bags, which I think it's one of the most popular initiatives, and 73% it will be using it all the time if the campus distribute the reusable shopping bags to students and staff, and 82% it thinks that it's very easy to carry out. The next one and the last one, it's the educational campaigns, that the majority thinks that it's easy to carry out, and half of the people, they say that they will participate in these educational campaigns. For example, it could be like beach cleanups or park cleanups in collaboration with local community organizations and residents. And let's go and see which is the most popular one. The most possible to use all the time, it was the reusable shopping bags and the bottle refilling stations, and not only sustainable, but economical also. And the most possible to use often is the composting programs. And let's go to the next one. The most easy to be carried out, it will be the educational campaign, as we mentioned before, and it's in a tie with the reusable shopping bags, 82%. And the most possible under certain condition, it will be the composting programs. So I think it's a little bit in the same page as what it's easy to use. And now, in the last slide, I would like to tell you some more initiatives that Nikki and I found, and it will be easy to implement with the already initiatives that we mentioned in the questionnaire. And for example, in the transportation part, in the mobility that Nikki mentioned, it's also if there are some repair station and the easy bicycle parking in the university, then probably many people will also have the opportunity to use more their bicycles and take them to go to the university. And as well, this goes very well with the other initiative that it's the bike sharing programs and convenient location on campuses, or some discount accent to the already municipal bike sharing seems that they are already implemented in some places, I think in Germany, in Holland, in Greece, not yet, but hopefully it will happen. And now in the waste part, it will be a very good initiative to have the university cafeteria offer smaller plates and no trays. So the students will take less portions and there would be no food waste. And also what we mentioned before, to make the recycle bins, the recycle stations, but also to be eye-catching, like to be in front of the regular bins. And also to have, in China, they had a very nice example for waste sorting game machines, like it's an electronic big game like from the 80s, but you can then you can separate the waste in the recycling and not recycling. and also to create social opportunities for sharing and reuse, such as repair cafes or science cafes that we are here doing, and networks for ride sharing, as we see that not many people are already using it. And another initiative, it's going, for example, if you bring your own cup, so you will not have a one single-use plastic. Maybe the canteen will charge more for, and if you bring your own mug, it will be free of charge. And that's all from me. Thank you for your attention. And now back to Spiros, our beautiful host.
Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, that's very interesting. I always love seeing, this type of data, and kind of my brain enjoys the puzzle of turning all of those things into meaningful policy directions. So that is the goal for today. I think it's essentially to take your brilliant research and all the things that we've learned through the research, through the survey, and to shape this into meaningful policy, hopefully. And I'm going to get to do that with your help. But before we get to that, before listening to your questions, I actually have a question, maybe reflecting on my own experience talking about single-use plastics and behavioral change. So trying to find ways, drivers and strategies to minimize the use of single-use plastics. And I think part of the discussion, which is a very interesting thing that you raised, which also we found to be very relevant, is that I think it's one of the cases where locality plays a very important role. So I would say, in general, I would argue that the waste footprint, if we say that, of every person is very much informed by personal lifestyle choices. So, for example, the things that I buy, the things I like to eat, my diet, etc. But it is also very much shaped by external forces, such as where I live. And for example, in most of Greek islands, the water that comes out from the tap is not actually potable. So it's if we are to analyze the type of waste a median person creates, as it pertains to the single-use plastics, I think we'll find by volume and by weight that single-use 1.5 liter plastic bottles are probably the number one item that we have to get rid of. And I'm kind of thinking more that it is part of labor laws that any employer needs to provide access to clean drinking water to people working in an office. And I remember back almost 7 or 8 years ago, when I was trying to get water filters installed in my department at the University of the Aegean in Syros. It was harder than it should be, and I actually had to raise that card that, you have to provide me as a worker with drinking water. So, but I think it's very interesting that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, how policy is very much targeted. And for example, a new policy about water would be very different in, islands in Greece compared to, Constance or Paris. So what's your reaction first off to this kind of observation? Because I think it's very interesting that probably the key strategy that you presented has to do with water. And I completely agree, and I'm curious to kind of understand the barriers to that type of change. But also, is that maybe because the sample is a bit more Greek than neatly separated amongst the four University Reform Alliance universities?
It is possible because, for example, in Germany, I think not I think the water is they have tap water and it's drinkable. So yes, if we see from which universities we had the most students, probably it was from the University of the Aegean, which I think it's in none of the islands the water is drinkable. And I think it would be very important to have a policy document that it could achieve some pressure to the university to provide some solution about for drink to have drinkable water. And it's also an open debate for all in our department also, and we are trying to achieve that. So let's see. Maybe because after our policy document, maybe it will be easier.
No, I think it's very interesting. Like in my experience, part of the strategy that we deployed was so that was the island of Paros around schools. It's kind of the same model with recycling, that if we get recycling into schools, then the children will teach their parents, and that will help us create and foster meaningful change around around our behavior and our consumption patterns. So we installed water filters in the schools and gave the children a reusable water bottle. So that way, at least for half their day, they didn't produce plastic by drinking water, which is, it sounds like a nonsensical phrase. I produce plastic by drinking water, but in a late stage capitalist society, it's a phrase that actually means something. So how can we stop creating plastic waste when we drink water? I think is a very interesting question. Yeah, and of course, at any time, feel free to raise your hand and add to the discussion. And you're always very much welcome to tell me I am an idiot. I am a professional idiot, so I get a bonus every time. What else? Can you tell us a bit more about mobility? And again, kind of same question, if you can reflect on how the different challenges shape the different places. For example, I would argue that in Lesbos, in our campus, it's very much an uphill battle, pun intended, to get there with a bike. So I would guess it would be much harder to create a bike sharing scheme compared to the Netherlands, where it's all flat and it's much easier to commute? Or is that about technology? So, for example, assisted electronic bikes would solve that problem.
Exactly, that's what we propose. We propose the promotion of e-bikes and electric scooters, because we know that some campuses in the Aegean, they're very difficult to drive there. It's not flat, or we don't have bike lanes, so it's easier to have electric assistant vehicles to make the commuting easier. We also know that we had a large participation of the University of the Aegean, where most of the mobility initiatives that we proposed were not known. So we were looking for a more extended participation from all the universities at the ERUA. but we couldn't have it. So we were trying to make different policy scenarios for its country or its university, its campus. But it's very difficult to do it. At the time, we had very little participation. So we are actually producing a policy document for all of them. And in case they have this initiative, they have to skip it and move to the next one.
Okay. I think that's makes sense, because not different feet needs different shoes, I guess, or different strokes for different folks, I guess, is a better way to put it. Kind of going back on that question and staying with mobility, and again, please feel free to jump in and ask anything, or again, share your experiences around mobility in this setting. I have a question which is for Nick again, because it's kind of connected with your interests and research, and essentially how you see policy and how a wider kind of net thrown at policy can really change. And my question is about road safety. And it sounds like, what is this doing here? We're talking about mobility. But I would argue that for many non-proficient, for example, bike riders, driving behavior and road safety is a meaningful barrier to change. So, for example, if I know HIOS has some of the worst drivers, statistically speaking, the least safe roads, as a young person traveling there, maybe I don't care that much, because when you're 18 you live forever. But like, how would a campaign to foster safe driving and don't kill yourself driving or kill others driving could actually be correlated with the goal of more sustainable mobility? Does that make sense? Or
actually, sustainable mobility is not about using friendly modes or have low carbon emissions. It's about having safe transport and equal for everyone. So you are correct. In here we have the worst drivers in Europe for a couple of years. Crete is the number one at the time. But by making a difference in information and education, you can actually give them the information about moving friendly and giving up on motorcycles, because we had the highest motorcycle ownership in Greece, actually in here, and we have the most accidents by young people. So we move to campaigns, educational campaigns about safety. At the same time, you're moving to a more friendly future. You can use an electric bike. It's not a big difference. You have electric power and you can move everywhere you want, but you have to move with lower speed, so it's more difficult to be in an accident. So I think that the most useful policy that we are going to propose is to have more educational and informational campaigns. So we can change it. I know that.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm looking at the time, and I think we have some more interactive elements through Miro for Mentimeter for our amazing participants, right? So we should probably stop chatting and move on to that, right? I might be wrong. Wait, I'm getting, yeah. I don't have one, so that doesn't actually help me out. So Yeah, we actually have some questions for you. So we're gonna go back to Mentimeter, and we want to hear you. We would rather hear your voice than actually your actual seeing you. But if you go to Mentimeter, you'll see that we want you to create a hierarchy of which of those initiatives do you believe is more feasible to implement, not which one you like the most, but which one do you feel is the most feasible. So you can drag and drop the things in your page and then submit them. So I'm going to give you some time to think about it. Top, we want the most feasible, and to the bottom, we want the least feasible. So yeah, let's try that exercise and see where it takes us, slowly and surely. Because again, you're not just wasting time here, but we really want to get you to share and to tell us what you think, because this is going to shape the policy that is going to be advocated by ERUA. See, this is still changing, and I like how this is changing. I think it's very much very biased by being in an educational environment, by having educational campaigns being the easiest and most feasible thing. Just because everybody teaches, I guess, means that, yeah, that's something we know how to do. And I'm kind of sad that composting programs is last, because, I mean, come on, you just need some bugs and dead stuff. Well, dead eating stuff. So yeah, it's easier than e-waste recycling, but that's, I guess, yeah, expert knowledge. Okay, I'm gonna wait an extra minute because that takes time. And then I'm gonna put my amazing PhD candidates to the spot by asking them to tell us what they think about your answers right now, their reaction to it. Or do you want to go through all the questions and then have a discussion about them?
What do you prefer? We don't have a preference.
Okay, then give me your initial reaction to the eight answers that we're seeing. It seems that educational campaigns is number one. Well done, nobody's biased. And composting and e-waste recycling are last.
Okay, I understand why educational campaigns, I think it's in the first choice. I think it's more easy to go out there and inform people, because they are, for example, many PhD students are volunteering to go to several schools or to other universities and exchange their knowledge and yes, to do this stuff. And also, for example, beach cleaning, it's very famous and very well organized in the islands. So I think, yes, educational campaigns, it's the most easy to implement. Because there are a lot of people that they want to help in this, also voluntarily. Reusable shopping bags, I think, yes, I can, it's easy to implement, but I think the only problem is not the how easy to implement is, it's not to forget them, because plenty of times I have been to the supermarket and forget my reusable shopping bags. Waste sorting stations, in some universities it could be a little less easy because of for example, if you are in an island, recycling is not that easy. Now in a big island like Lesbos, for example, now we have also waste sorting stations about glass and plastic in our university. And it helps also to be different colors and a nice shape, so it will draw attention. And also to know this goes well with the educational campaigns, because you need to know where to throw what, because it was a good educational campaign last year and many people were throwing in the wrong bin. So yes, it will be, it combines nicely. The zero waste events, yes, I can understand that it's not only in campuses. It's not only can happen from campuses. It needs to the catering also to be applicable to that. And e-waste recycling, it's more difficult, yes, because I don't know if it's easy to collect them in all the campuses. But composting programs, I can understand your why you were how do you say, surprised, because it's not really that difficult to implement, but you need to implement it correctly, and it needs a little space, so it needs some space also. But I don't understand why it's 7. That's from me.
And I mean, just to kind of open this up, and we'd love to get kind of your understanding of why. So what's the thinking behind your answers? But as a kind of to comment on this as a researcher, I mean, this is great, because when we actually have the knowledge of which of those things are more feasible and less feasible, and we see something that's really a high up in our list be last, that really points to something that is misunderstood, something that has a lot of barriers to adoption. And that means that it's actually a very interesting opportunity to connect it with educational campaigns and essentially, you know, talk to people about how easy natural composting is. Essentially, if we are to compare composting with e-waste recycling, which is very technical and very hard to do and very dangerous in many ways, I think it's really interesting, this contrast of perceived feasibility versus actual feasibility. Okay, so anyone else who would like to comment on their answers, on their hierarchy, or should we move on to the next one? Okay, is there any answer that you think is a bullshit strategy that doesn't really work and shouldn't be in there and makes you angry? No anger. Okay. I sometimes get very angry about educational campaigns. They seem to be this magic pill type solution that if you talk any problem long enough, you can always kind of abstract it into a lack of proper education and go, yes, the solution to the problem is education. I mean, it's the solution to everything is education, but also the solution to nothing is education, because many of the things that we're doing wrong, we were told by education to do them that way. Hence, yeah. But yeah, let's not think about my problems. Yes, Katerina, we'd love to hear more from you. Hello, welcome.
Yeah, I would just like to say that I have the same opinion as you do, because I think that mostly people have the tendency to blame somebody who has the kind of how to say power. And so I think that every change begins from us. So I'd rather see composting programs like the first option and the bottom, the educational one, but it could be used just to make awareness plans, etc. So this is the only thing I would like to comment.
So you're saying let's compost the educators?
I mean, it should be higher and education should be in the middle kind of thing, because we are witnesses of what education does nowadays. So I suppose that we have to reconsider it, or at least see what's going wrong and change it in a way. So yeah, just reconsider it. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we can move on to the next slide. So yeah, the same link should work. So now we're asking
Oh,
which...
I think there's a mistake.
Yeah.
Because yes, it's the right question here is which of this initiative is the most possible for you to do, to act on. It's what will you prefer doing from that, not what is feasible to implement. I think maybe it was wrong. Yes.
Yeah, it's a live show, you know, live shows, technical difficulties are going to happen. Can we take the next one if it's maybe the right one? Okay, so we're back, but this can we go back to the previous one? Sorry for the but not feasible. Instead of feasible, I want you to take the word feasible out of your head, throw it away, and look at it as which one is the one that you personally would be more happy to use, to engage with, to integrate into your everyday life, right? Yeah. So let's see what would you like to do?
Not what it's easy to do. What would you prefer to do? Yes.
I know I'm gonna put educational campaigns last because I'll have to deliver them and that's work and I'm lazy, so you know. But you don't have to do it that way. Okay, so we already have 4. Okay. Okay, I think I need to close this meeting and call the rector to tell him that he's gonna buy around 30 different water refill stations for all university buildings. It has been decided. So yeah, just give me one moment and I'll be back as you keep answering the questions. Wow, that was quite a finish because reusable soaping bags almost won, and then bottle refilling stations came back to number 1. Okay, I'm just gonna read through it because you don't have eyes apparently. So number 1, bottle refilling station. Everyone would be very happy to get rid of their single-use plastic bottles and have like that one, and have something like this one, not an invisible bottle, an actual anyway, second is reusable soaping bags, so not using single-use plastic bags anymore. The introduction of waste sorting stations in campuses, and I guess one of the stations that would be sorted is organics, hence composting programs. Undertaking and running zero waste events, educational campaigns, and the last one is e-waste recycling. I think that's very interesting because I'd kind of group that with composting and waste sorting. I mean, e-waste is just one more category of waste. Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, so what do you think, Nancy? How are you surprised?
Not really, because I think, yes, the water refilling station is a major problem in our islands. So I think it will be very good to achieve some pressure to implement that. But I think it's a little bit more difficult. Yes, like the previous question showed that it's more difficult to implement. So, but our desire, because it's very big, so it will be enough to start our battle about that. Like from not we can start from some floors of the university, like to have one in each floor. I don't think that the cost it will be so big, but the difference in our bottle waste it will be amazing, I think. And for example, it's ironic because we are a department of environment, so we need to to have this alternative. Okay, the reusable soaping bags. Okay, I understand. The waste recycling, I think yes, because I agree with you because it's another type of waste, but and also I don't think that it's too popular, for example, that we don't have so much e-waste in our campus life. It will be it will be a good place though to bring every electronic waste that we might have, because also in the other communities, it's I mean in the cities, it's not really easy to recycle electronic waste. Educational campaigns, I think you convinced them that it's not the proper
Sorry.
initiative. And yes, but what is your favorite? You didn't say, you didn't answer that. Or your favorite is bottle refilling stations videos?
I'm trying to consider my biases. I think my favorite is composting programs because I think they illustrate this circularity idea and kind of shed a light to the irrationality of the waste model that we currently have, where we perceive of waste as not as you know, biological nutrients that they could be. So I think there is a very fuzzy, pleasurable niceness to composting. It's a ritual of care. I think you have to care for disgusting bugs and fungi and other biological non-human actors that make this a possibility, and it needs to be taken care of, and it takes something that's end of life. And if you're into gardening as well, it's kind of magical to think that this flower essentially was a rotting apple peel some time ago, and now it's a beautiful flower. So I think there is some poetry to that and some different ways of looking at the world, which I think are part of solving the problem. So yeah, for me, composting programs, I think in their entirety have a emancipatory almost character around how we perceive waste. I think the word waste is terrible. We need to get rid of it. It's helpful right now, but a perfect world, we wouldn't have that word because we wouldn't need that concept. So yeah, that's my answer. Very biased.
And if I can add something to the composting programs, it will be very good to take the results of the compost. And for example, in our department, they are trying to make biogas from it. So it will be also zero waste. It will be a source for energy and for experiments. So I think they could also take this under consideration.
Yeah, and yeah, I think it's we could go into a big tangent, but it's like if we think about this, you know, looking at humans as a historically artificial being opposed to natural forces, which is absolute bullshit. I think these type of natural processes are kind of a reminder that we're not artificial, we're natural, and the more we take care of nature, the more our lives are going to be enriched and healthy. But yeah, again, that's a very interesting discussion. Again, if we reflect and think about policy, because we kind of see two different and very valid ways to think about those things. The one is the linear technocratic almost, that, okay, if I do a waste audit of all the students and employees of the University of the Aegean, I can with great certainty say that either by volume or by weight, single-use plastic bottles are going to be the number one item, unless someone is a massive like soda drinker, but again, single-use plastic bottles, or like a beer lover, maybe aluminum cans, but you have to drink some water eventually. And if I think of it quantitatively, then if I deploy a strategy that minimizes the use of bottled water in everyday life, then that leads to the minimum kind of minimum evil, let's call it, the minimum amount of waste. I think composting programs and everything we talked about are kind of in a more transformative long-term thinking of policy of, okay, how can I engage with people and have a conversation around waste and around nature and around sustainability and the transitions necessary to safeguard the natural environment. And this, composting might, per weight of, percentage of weight produced, of waste produced per weight, maybe organic might be number 3, but the longer term meaningful changes that this can foster, I think, are much more interesting. And I think that's something very interesting when we're talking about policy. We have to consider the timescales, we have to consider the end goal. If the end goal is to minimize waste produced, yeah, maybe number 1 is the right way to go. Recycling is the way to go. But also, if we are to apply a tiny bit of criticality, we know recycling is kind of the least bad option. And then if we want policy to do good, that means we have to go to very different directions, I guess. Okay, any last thoughts around your drivers and behavioral changes and things that initiatives that you'd like to do differently? Is there something that is missing that you think you would like to see here? Probably not. Okay, if we've covered all bases, I think we can move on to the next question, which is, we're gonna shift gears, pun intended again, and we're gonna talk about mobility. So the next question is about to appear in your screen, and it's around which of these initiatives do you feel is the most feasible to implement? So which of those 7 initiatives is the most feasible to implement in your university? So yeah, again, this is a ranked choice. I like that we have a group of very pragmatic people here with us today. That makes me happy. Kind of. As an engineer, it makes me happy. As a person who doesn't really like engineers, and myself, I don't know. Okay, so Nikki, would you like to start telling me what I'm seeing in front of me? Because as I'd like to advertise, I'm an idiot.
I'm actually a bit surprised about educational campaigns that they're so low in the ranking.
You
And
can
I
blame me
think
for that.
yeah, because it's not about educating drivers. It's about informating people about the alternatives they have. I mean, no one told us that if we can plan early our trips, it will be cheaper, and we will spend less time, and we will minimize our ecological footprint, and we will be more fit if we cycle or if we walk. But okay, the public transportation partnership is the one that it's more feasible. We saw it, the results of the questionnaire as well. I mean, we are all Greeks at the time, and we're spending money for one-way ticket, and we don't have a discount in monthly or yearly passes. The next one, I think it's at the same place, the pedestrian-friendly campus design, the bike-sharing programs, and the carpooling platforms. They're all what we need actually in Greece. I'm not surprised of them. The shuttle service, it's very low. I can understand why. We don't have big campuses, so we don't mind it. If we have shuttle services inside. Okay, not surprised very much.
Okay, then I can start asking stupid questions. I'm interested that I kind of find it ironic to see public transport partnerships first. I think my question there is that, like, have you been to Greece? Have you ever seen like public organizations do partnerships? Like, I think that's my question to all of you who have apparently think that's the easiest thing to do. But okay, I guess maybe I've been away for too long and things have changed. Can you tell us a bit more, and kind of in the same sense, I'm like shuttle services, yeah, we don't have funding for other stuff. Yeah, let's buy a bus so that we can drive people to and fro campus.
It's easier to make the public transport partnerships than making new and sustainable friendly campuses. I mean, you cannot change the design of the campus. It's easiest to have a partnership with public transport.
Okay, or is it? That I'm not, I don't know. I'm not the expert here. I'm just asking. I guess you know better by saying it, by claiming it is, for sure. Okay, can you tell us a bit more again about, in my research, and you want to talk about mobility, but I'm hosting, so sorry for that. My question is kind of as it pertains to the sharing economy and these types of sharing based infrastructure projects. Is there a wider discussion around sustainability, around material commodity fetishism, almost, about this idea of the car being the symbol of the American dream, this great emancipatory invention that frees people, the individual people, and makes them a person, compared to socialist public transport. So is this type of sharing economy, is it able to kind of change our consumption patterns? Do we care about that? Is that something that is interesting? So, for example, just as a thought exercise, I think during the Cold War times in the 50s and 60s, where the American dream was kind of becoming much more American, much less of a dream, there was an actual awareness campaign to get people to not carpool to work, because that's what socialists do, and you're hurting the economy by not taking your car. and having 4 people go to work together.
I think that we have this culture of owning a vehicle. But that's why I think that educating and informing people about the benefits of not owning a car, I mean, it's more expensive. If you are a good planner, you can do it with less money in less hours because you don't have to look for parking spaces, or you don't have to thinking about driving for a long time. So I think that it's very difficult to be a change, but it's possible. I mean, what about educating young people that our culture is to be more friendly, or our culture is to minimize our ecological footprint, so we don't have to own our own car and use the public transport or environmental friendly modes, or that if you want to do a trip, a daily trip in a rainy day, you can go in an application or a platform and rent a car for the time you want it. So it's about education and change. I mean, you have to give them something in order to switch. It's about the credit system. If you make a platform of carpooling or car sharing and then give them the opportunity to have a discount in something else, they probably will use it.
Okay, very good, very interesting question. Yanis, yeah, hi.
Sorry for that. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to add some thoughts to the discussion, which is very, very interesting. Well, I'm just thinking loudly here, not as a structured very much thought. All I can see is maybe a combination of several factors that need to be take care of. I mean, the public transportation as a more let's say in combination with the campus design or the access to the campus, let's say in a more citywide perspective, maybe it would be an interesting maybe discussion, maybe in a more theoretical level, because we all know that in practice there are a lot of other factors that affect the easiness, let's say, to implement design solutions in several cities or islands or other places. But I think the culture of carpooling in combination of lessen the burden, let's say, from the cars indeed as a number somehow, that can move from areas, from places, would help a lot to offer a more, let's say, somehow sustainable solution. I'm thinking loudly here because I'm thinking also of the difficulty that arose during the COVID, let's say, era. When we had the COVID situation, public transportation or a solution like carpooling really somehow destroys that kind of interconnectivity, because more people are being more isolated. So it maybe would not be possible to have a lot of people in a small car or something. But I don't have a suggestion or solution to say. I'm just thinking that there needs to be a combination of factors, also taking in consideration of how we design the public transportation systems or public transportation um, design, let's say, in a city level, not only in a campus level. I don't know if that helps just a bit for the discussion. And thank you again.
No, thank you very much. I think you raise a couple of very interesting points. I think one is when we're talking about behavioral change, it's always a debate around the carrot and the whip, because we're good people. We tend to believe in the whip more. We tend to believe that sustained behavioral change is done by choice. But if I was, for example, to think about pedestrian-friendly campus, you know what would really change the way that people commute to the university? If you removed all parking spaces, people would be very angry, but that would force them to change their behavior. And I think there is just as a cliff note, not to talk about that now, but I think that you've actually very eloquently said a lot of things about universities, because I think universities and mobility, it's very much connected to the ideological framework within which we see universities. And I think it's great to have this conversation in the context of ERUA, where we're kind of trying to reform the position of universities, and kind of having Paris be part of it, I think is very interesting, because I think the conventional wisdom, especially in Greece, is all about moving universities out of urban areas, out of city centers, to the periphery, kind of in delegated, almost ghettified areas where those pesky liberal ideas cannot infect common people. We need to segregate universities from the city, because if they're an organic part of the city, God forbid we'd have another May 68 at some point. And that creates need for more mobility, because instead of being an organic part of the city, like the National Technical University of Athens used to be when it was in the city center, close to other three universities, the idea to move the universities away from the city center is actually an ideological position, and it has to do with the role of universities, and that informs mobility. But that's a huge discussion that we shouldn't even try to unpack today. But I think it's a very interesting point to think about. So with that, let's go to our, unless Nikki has something to say about that.
Yes, I have to add something.
Yeah.
What Giannis brought about the COVID era. In that period, we didn't move, or we didn't commute daily. You had to do the less minimum trips, the most necessary ones, and then that was the time where megalos peripatos were invented in Greece. That was a great idea. It was based on I think what Japanese said. I give it to them and they will use it. So if the infrastructure suddenly changes, you have to move forward to that change. If you had 5 lanes and now you have 2, you have to transform and change your routine to the change. So the problem is that the infrastructure and the policy is the one that makes the problem, because you can change the infrastructure, but you have to change the policy. You have to give people the alternatives to move. If you want to minimize the traffic lanes, you have to give them more frequent bus services or metro services. Or if you want to get rid of their cars, you have to expand the bus stops or the metro stations closer to them. So it's a combination of behavior, of infrastructure and policy. So that's the only way to be done and successfully be done.
Thank you for that. That was, yeah, very interesting. Okay, let's go to the last question because I think we're about to wrap this up. Yep, awesome. Oh, I thought that was the second. There was another one. Sorry. That's okay. We'll ad lib. Anyway. So let's take a step back and think again. Let me invite both of my amazing PhD candidates, people, human beings, everything in between. So what are our, again, how can you ask such a question in an easy way? I don't know, I'm gonna try and I'm gonna go, okay, so what are your expert policy suggestions so far? What are we feeling? Where are we going to go? Do you not, if you want to keep your report spoiler free, just give us a teaser, not necessary to tell us everything.
For me, the first one is the educational and information campaigns. I mean, we have to learn how to use mobility. We have to have knowledge on what the alternatives are and what are the benefits of getting rid of the motorized modes that we used at the time. So the first one is that, and the second one is the promotion of friendly modes like bike sharing or e-scooters, probably.
Okay, can I ask your expert opinion around policy making and what are the challenges and how do we tread the political as experts and as technocrats, sorry for that, when we're trying to come up with policy? And I know I said it in our last Science Cafe, but I keep raising it because I think it's a very interesting moment in time. Here in the UK, the ultra low emission zone is becoming I would say, central part of the debate as we're moving towards general elections next year, and kind of rolling back environmental legislation, where it becomes part of the political discussion. And I think that also applies to waste, not just mobility. So I'd kind of like to get both of your reactions around politicizing. I mean, is science political? I guess it is for me. Is creating policy part of science or part of politics? And if it's both, how do we kind of deal with people who maybe don't really know what they're talking about, but they're talking about it very loudly? Like, for example, during his election campaign leading up to the elections, Donald Trump made and was selling $20 each plastic straws with the words "Make America Great Again," because he felt that was a way to own the liberals and to, I don't know, essentially to signify that those hippie people who love the environment are the people I'm up against. So essentially, yes. What about politicians? I know scientists. I mostly like most of them. But yeah, what happens when we enter the political sphere?
That's the most difficult one because you have to make the policy scenarios. You have to make 2 or 3 or 4 and then present it to them. They don't know how to read them and they don't understand what the benefits are. That's the most difficult things to, it's not about educating, it's about trying to sell them a solution. and it's very difficult in transportation for someone that it's not a technocrat to understand why it's better to get rid of the parking spaces in a neighborhood and build a bike lane or a bus stop. So that's the that's the thing, you cannot go with that. You cannot speak to them because they don't hear you. They're saying that we cannot have angry people. We don't have people in with young kids to cycle, or they're too old to cycle, or we don't have the culture to cycle. And I understand that, I see that, but I think that people don't have the choice. If you give them a bike lane, they probably will cycle, and the kids will cycle for sure. So we are part of the change. You have to make a policy scenario, not for now, but for a timeline of 10 years later or 5 years later. It's not for you, it's for the future generations. It's hard, but it has to be done.
Okay, I cannot think of anyone I'd rather be doing it with than the two of you. Nancy, what's your reaction?
I think yes. I agree perfectly with Nikki on that, but and also I want to say that at some point there are some tools, some interactive tools, for example, that you can use citizen science, and after that, for some results, they can be viewed from policymakers. So the correlation between those two will be immediately. So they will take the voices of the citizens will be heard. So I think this in a society, but it can also be done in the universities, for example. So it will be good. It will be the best solution to have the science cafe and for people to be able to say their opinion about policies, because the campus, for example, waste policies that we will want to make, they will play a crucial role in shaping students' behavior. So I think there's a good step that is happening here today, and let's hope that we can continue in also in later time in a little bit, yes.
So just to make sure that I understand correctly, what you're saying is that approaches, for example, like citizen science and what we would call kind of almost an activism, a society-based bottom-up approach to those issues are more effective than talking to politicians, because if we get the people to understand and make an issue into a voting issue, that then the politicians will follow. So I had it the wrong way around.
No, I think, for example, if I understand correctly what you said, the important thing is for the people to be heard, and we need to find ways to include the people to this process of the policy making. It's not only to follow the roads that has already been followed. We need to make it more different.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I think this is where citizen science and everybody and students come and play a role.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, yeah, I think we completely agree. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we can wrap this up. I think we've covered everything. I think we've heard everybody's voice. Well, seen everybody answers in Mentimeter, not really heard anybody's voice, but that's okay. Mondays are always hard. I'd like to thank well, the both of you very much for taking the time and for doing this. Also, I'd like to thank our wonderful technical team. So Yanis and Minas, thank you very much. Kind of make it possible. And we're going to take all of the things that you told us today, and we're going to try to integrate them into the policy document that we are working on, and hopefully have some amazing ideas of how we can make the campuses really sustainable. So yeah, this is today's session. Thank you all very much, and we'll be in touch soon through other means. Yeah, but thank you all very much and have a wonderful week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.